Good morning. This is the podcast Ancient Rome Today. The first association with ancient Rome that comes to mind is its power and expansion. The empire reached its maximum extent in 117 AD under the Emperor Trajan. However, Rome was involved in territorial conquests practically from the beginning of its existence. When discussing territorial extension, it is important to distinguish between colonies and provinces. A colony is a planned settlement of Roman citizens outside Rome, typically established on conquered territory. After conquering a new territory, the Romans set up a military camp. Later, civilians, veterans, and merchants arrived. There were two types of colonies. First, a Roman colony. Second, a colony under Latin law. In Roman colonies, the inhabitants had Roman citizenship with full rights. Such colonies were under Rome's control. Colonies under Latin law were autonomous, and they established a Roman-style administration with local magistrates. However, they were obligated to provide troops to aid Rome in times of war. There were also Roman military colonies located on the borders of the empire and on the coasts. While colonies were primarily located on the territory of modern Italy, provinces were conquered lands outside of Italy. For instance, Sicily became the first Roman province in 241 BC. Later, Sardinia and Corsica were added as provinces. Each province was administered by a magistrate called a proconsul or propraetor, who was politically powerful. Such a person was also responsible for the collection of taxes and the handling of juridical procedures. Provinces were not obligated to provide troops to Rome, but they had to pay annual taxes. Augustus established that the taxes from the imperial provinces were to be allocated to the fiscus, a separate fund, under his direct control, rather than to the public treasury administered by the Senate. With the money paid to the fiscus, Augustus financed public works and the army. Rome also aimed to carry out so-called Romanization processes to assimilate the political and cultural life of the provinces into the imperial system, providing models of behavior and administration for Roman society. Cities were also rebuilt according to the Roman model, with the Forum at their center. The most Romanized provinces were Gallia, Narbonensis, Spain, and Africa, where the Latin language and culture became prevalent over time. The eastern provinces were less Romanized, as the Greek language and Hellenistic culture hindered the penetration of Roman culture. Despite this, Rome remained very tolerant of local cultures and religions in the provinces. People living in provinces could not participate in Rome's political life and could not enter into iusti nuptiae, marriages with Roman citizens. However, this rule changed with Caracalla's decision to grant Roman citizenship to all inhabitants of the empire. There is a need for another episode to name all the provinces of Rome. Therefore, I'd recommend that you check the map of the Roman Empire of 117 AD on the web. Let's get back to modern times. Which empire is the largest of all time? Google says that the British Empire was the largest empire in history, both in terms of territorial extension and population at its peak. At the beginning of the 20th century, it covered approximately 34 million square kilometers, controlling about a quarter of the world's land surface and governing 23% of the world's population. The provinces of the British Empire were governed in various ways. For example, the settler colonies, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, enjoyed extensive internal autonomy with representative governments and elected parliaments. British control was limited to foreign affairs and defence. Colonies of exploitation were governed directly by Great Britain, often with an appointed governor and a legislative council composed of British officials and local representatives. India is a famous example of this colonial type. The third type of colony was called a protectorate. These were territories where local government was maintained, but under the supervision and control of a British protectorate, which gained control over foreign policy, defence, and the administration of justice. Which other modern empires come to your mind? Obviously, ancient Rome established a solid political and juridical foundation that has served as a basis for many modern empires. Thank you for your attention.